Hi, everybody. My name is Christine Park, and I'm the director of the Simulation and Integrative Learning Institute at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And I'm here today with three of my SAIL colleagues.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bob Kiser. I'm the Associate Director of SAIL.
Hello, I'm Lauren McKenzie, Assistant Director at SAIL.
And I'm Tanja Barac, the other Assistant Director at SAIL.
So together, we'd like to welcome you to Healthcare Simulation Week 2022. Another little bit of interesting information, you might know that Bob Kiser and I are hosts of the Beyond Simulation podcast. But today, we're here to talk about how does our code of ethics, the Healthcare Simulation Code of Ethics, inform excellence in a new era? And we are going to do that as a snack-sized sim chat today. So I don't know about you, but when you take in the entirety of the Healthcare Simulationist Code of Ethics, it's kind of a lot to digest.
Right? Yeah, there's a lot there.
There is. So for today, what we'd like to do is focus in on just one of those core value areas, the one of mutual respect, and talk about how our experience as simulationists relates to this value and what we derive from it. So as a brief review of this third core value, we're going to be talking about how is it that we respect the rights, dignity, and worth of all. And what does it look like to, for example, honor the knowledge, skills, and values and vulnerability of learners and colleagues? What is it like for us to listen to other points of view? Exhibiting humane behavior, honoring diversity, fostering inclusion. How do we make that real in our day-to-day lives at work? And what about maximizing safety and minimizing physical and psychological risk? And so, without further ado, just diving right in, Bob, how does this core value area relate to you as a simulationist?
Thanks, Christine, for getting us started. So it relates to everything that I do and we do as simulationists. But as I was looking at this and thinking about this presentation, I was thinking it specifically, how does it relate to how I interact with faculty or people using our sim center? Because I think it's unrealistic to ask them to read through this and to study this. So then how do we bring this to the forefront for them? Uh, an example of, like, I was thinking with faculty is that they will have an experience in the hospital and even maybe a traumatic experience. Then they'll bring it to our sim center saying, hey, let's reproduce this so our learners can go through it. And I think as a simulationist, it is my job, our job, to challenge that, well, maybe we don't want to reproduce that traumatic experience as it is here in the sim center because, well, question, do we want to traumatize our learners? We have control here at the sim center about what we produce. So in the hospital, of course, we can't control that. Things happen. But here, well, let's maybe create a bite size part of that experience and then have a really robust debriefing so that we don't have to traumatize, but that we can produce this learning experience for the learners. And then explaining that that also then relates to how we as simulationists relate to the code of ethics and introducing it that way. I also was thinking of another way to maybe kind of introduce the idea of, especially this third domain, to our faculty, and that is something that we've created here at SAIL, is a new template for our human-based simulation. And this template, so we're looking at with the template, challenging, like, how do we make sure that we are honoring diversity? How do we make sure that we're having inclusion in our cases and not just writing cases to throw things into the case to make them more challenging, which of course we want cases challenging, but to challenge to make sure that we're putting things in there consciously and deliberately. So in our template, with the choices that our faculty make, we ask them to say, so why are you making this choice? So you're saying this is a male, 35, why is it a male? Maybe it could be a female. Maybe it could be, a trans person. Maybe it could be non-binary. So why particularly are we making the choice for this case to be this demographic? And then going through the entire case, why are we choosing all the other items for it? But again, telling us to make sure that we're being deliberate in our choices. But again, I think it's this relationship to our faculty and people who may not be as knowledgeable about the code of ethics, but I still think have the same desire we have to create, ethical simulations and helping them with this. So I think that's where my mind went to when I thought about this.
It's really great, Bob. And one of the things that I like about the template is that we have really re-engineered the case design process to not start with the clinical syndrome itself, but more around some of the other principles that you were talking about.
Right.
So actually, what is your favorite part of the new template?
Favorite part of the new template. Okay, so we still have learning objectives, but we also added something else called experiential objectives. And so for this, we are asking the faculty or case writers, whoever they may be, what is the experience that you want the learners to have in the room? So not just what do you want them to learn, their takeaways, of course we want that, but what is the experience that you want them to have, which actually helps us in creating these cases and kind of molding and also focusing them. So I think it's the experiential objectives. So.
I like that part too.
Mhm.
Yeah, really cool. So, okay, I'm going to throw it to Laura. So how does this relate to you as a simulationist?
Well, I love that you mentioned the experiential objectives, because I think for me, thinking about the vulnerability of our standardized patients, our instructors, and our learners, that in these experiences, what are they having to bring to these simulations? And as a simulationist, I have to be mindful and acknowledge the emotional and psychological toll that these simulations might take on our participants. And that's just given me a lot to think about, and in terms of how we approach the simulation, in terms of recruitment, training, and then debriefing. So some things that I have participated in would be creating a Zen room for the standardized patients to decompress after a psychiatry clerkship exam that was just very taxing. And it was a space for folks to, after a day of doing psych cases that, were physically daunting, emotionally challenging, some very sort of sensitive topics involved with those cases, a decompressing space for people to just relax, watch videos, listen to music, eat some chocolate, turn the lights off or down so that there were no fluorescents, and just hang out. And that's just an example of kind of how to debrief and take care of each other. Some other things that we're sort of toying with are, how do we include folks a little bit more in the process of inviting them to participate in simulations as standardized patients. In the past, we would just sort of say, here's what this is about. Here are some sensitive subjects that might come up. We're toying with, well, should we just send the cases to people before we book them? Should we let them see every single detail so that they can make the decision for themselves? And that's still an open question for us. In the training of these cases, we have to acknowledge the difficulty that doing back-to-back scenarios might cause. So we need to think about building in breaks. We need to think about training, pacing. Pace yourselves. You don't have to operate at a 10 at every moment. Where can you find moments to be a 2, a 5, a 7? Setting boundaries for emotional responses. So these are things that, we've been doing in our trainings. And lastly, I think just acknowledging that our lives are not static. We change as humans, and therefore we change what we're comfortable with, and just being open to people needing to bow out, needing to change responsibilities as their lives change.
I agree. I love that, being conscious that we're all humans.
Mhm.
So I want to go back to the Zen room. And we
Yes.
also, Zen room, we're actually using it with learners too now. We have a program
Yes.
called First Death. And so, and the learners, and thinking about when they go through these experiences.
Mhm.
But okay, so I have a fun question though. So with the Zen room, especially for the SPs, what is your favorite type of videos to play?
Well, my favorite type, baby elephants, hands down. But I think the
What-
SPs really liked to watch So You Think You Can Dance videos.
I like that. Wait, why baby elephants?
Because I mean, you can't see a baby elephant and not smile.
Okay, fair.
That's a fact. Thank you for that, Bob. I'm already smiling thinking about baby elephants. So Tanja, tell us a little bit about how this relates to you and your work at SAIL as a simulationist.
Yeah, and before I go into that, I want to say the students loved puppy videos, but like you said, I think baby anything miniature will make anyone laugh. So videos are definitely helpful in those Zen rooms. So for me and how this code of ethic, mutual respect kind of relates to me as a simulationist. So I think what the sales staff does really well here is meeting the learners at wherever they are when they walk through that door that day. I think that we do a really great job at knowing that we're assuming that not everyone's going to be on their very best day. They're not going to be on their A game. Also just respecting what learner level that they're at and what skill level, because some students might progress quicker than others, and just acknowledging that, and also just realizing that we're all human and every day is going to be different. I think, Laura, you touched on that, pacing ourselves, knowing that one day you might be a 3 and tomorrow you might be a 10, and that's okay. And so I think our staff really does a good job at respecting that level changes amongst our learners and even ourselves. And so going into any program knowing that already sort of sets this this tone, this precedence that no matter what's going to happen today, it's going to be okay. We'll debrief in the end. And I think what SAIL does to make sure that, that we are all on the same page, we as in staff, students, and faculty, is we remind ourselves to create a respectful, non-judgmental space for all of us, especially our learners. And so in reminding us to do that, and sort of with reminding the students too, we've created a simulation agreement. And if I may, I'm going to share my screen. And full disclosure, the simulation agreement was inspired and used with permission from a work group from the Institute of Healthcare Improvement. And I think it really honestly hits almost every point of this mutual respect code of ethic. It covers all the bases, and it really just reminds us how to treat each other. So it sort of provides us with bylaws that we hope that the learners and staff and faculty abide by every time that they're here at the center. So, I mean, if we're looking at it, even this first one, making room for and finding worth in all voices, trying it on, owning this with us, saying what we feel is that we always want the students to feel comfortable doing, especially in a debrief post encounter, and then surfacing those cultural assumptions. Are just a few of those on the list, but you can kind of see how they all hit a lot of those points on this code of ethic, and really honors each other and our knowledge and our skill level, as I mentioned, and just listening to each other and seeking to understand why maybe you made the decision you did, but allowing us to have this safe space so that we feel brave to make some of those bolder decisions, or there's bolder interventions, let's say, or work as a team and kind of speak up for ourselves without feeling judgment. So I love this. I'm so grateful that we did this, because it really just puts it out there. Like, this is how we should, these are our bylaws that we should follow every time that we're here. And we share this with our students during every orientation when they're here at the center. And I'm glad we did it, because, I think they appreciate it too, that we are making this conscious effort to abide by that mutual respect. I think we're on to asking Christine, how does this relate to you as a simulationist?
Well, I have really loved all of this discussion. And so amplifying actually to think about connecting it to this core value. And for me, I want to come back to the bullet point about and connect to the notion of honoring the skills, values, and vulnerability of the learners and colleagues. And there's another group on there that we need to make sure to include, and that is the people with the lived experience that we are simulating. And it strikes me that we often talk about patient-centered care and patient-centered communication. And not to get too semantic about it, but there's a risk in a centering activity that there's a little bit of objectification. If you think we're all standing in a circle around someone in the center, that would be a or a person-centered activity. But does that patient actually feel like they're a partner in the process? So one of the things that I'm really proud of that we have undertaken at SAIL is to really walk the talk in terms of creating cases in a patient-partnered manner. And this means not relying on what we think we've seen or observed or heard about, but actually going directly to the groups with the lived experience. And we're talking, especially with starting with those groups that are coming from marginalized and minoritized experiences. And so we have just embarked on that journey of conducting focus groups with different areas, and we are going to be analyzing those, incorporating their voices, and it doesn't end there. Once the focus group is over, we are going to continue in an iterative fashion to develop cases in a partnered manner. So I'm super excited about that.
Definitely food for thought.
Right. Well, and I have one quick question. So for that, how then does the patient partner with us after we've done the main focus group? So how do you see that partnership happening?
I think there's so many different ways. One can be that those patients can be the SPs themselves. The other is that they can be part of piloting and training of cases. They can be consultants to even the clinical aspects of the case. Does it make sense if we said you should this or that, or this is your struggle? And we understand that one patient experiences is not emblematic of every patient with that particular, whatever it is we're trying to simulate, but we're not trying to represent that. What we're trying to do is increase representation of the voices that need to be at the table.
Very cool. Okay, and on that note, I want to thank everyone for joining the SAIL simulation team for this snack-sized sim chat, and we hope that you have a great healthcare simulation week.